Good afternoon. My name is Matt Diver Tomlin. A little bit of background about myself. I have a Bachelor of Science in Management and Information Systems, a Master of Science in Homeland Security and Emergency Management, and I'm currently working on my doctorate in Strategic Security. I've been a diver for 12 years. Have 2 tours to Iraq. My second tour, I was the liaison officer for all diving operations for U.S. Forces Iraq. So I've got a pretty good amount of experience downrange in the Middle East. Currently the JDO course manager, the Joint Diving Officer Program, which you guys haven't had a lot of experience with them, but prior to the JDO course existing, they were actually embedded in the course with y'all for 2 chucks. So they do very similar stuff and they learn some more advanced topics before they graduate and get their diving officer pin. A quick disclaimer, some of the images in this presentation you may find disturbing. You should find them disturbing, all right? The fact of the matter is that we're in the business of war. War is never pretty, it never smells good, right? It's never any fun. But it is what we've signed up to do for a living. So we're going over the victim identity model. It's basically the method that I've developed to predict when the next violent outbreak will occur. Okay, and we'll get into detail on it as we go. If you have any questions, just go ahead and save them for the end and we'll have a little discussion at the tail end of the brief today. A gentleman by the name of Hedges is a Pulitzer-winning author, wrote a book called What Every Person Should Know About War. During his research, he discovered that war, defined as a conflict that takes 1,000 lives or more, of the past 3,400 years of recorded history, humans have been entirely at peace for only 268 of them, or just 8% of recorded history. Over 108 million people have died in just the 20th century during war. So it kind of begs the question, when you think about it, especially for that length of time, right? Why is it that we fight each other? Why do we kill each other? And when we do get into a warfare situation, why are we the good guys and the other person is the bad guys, right? They're the bad ones, they're the evil ones, and on their side of the coin, they're saying the same things about us, right? During World War II, the Japanese convinced their population that we were going to rape and murder them all if we captured them. That's why very few of them surrendered. They had them completely convinced that we were barbarians and that we were going to massacre all of them, right? So they were the good guys, we were the bad guys. In our mind, it was the exact opposite, right? So why does that happen? Why does that occur? Because if we know when it's going to occur or why it occurs, we might be able to do something about it, right? All right, so part of the problem with predicting warfare is that existing theories on warfare don't actually explain enough of the phenomenon, all right? So we have things like what's called anarchistic self-help. It's a theory about warfare, okay? And what that theory says is every country is looking out for number one. The actual global environment, right, is anarchy. Like there's nobody in charge. In theory, the UN is, we all know, don't listen to the UN. So, but there's no kingdom of the world, right? There's no king of the world. There's no arbitrator that every country agrees is in charge of them. So it's an anarchy. So each country is not really fighting, but competing against the other countries in the world, right, for money, resources, whatever. And that's a theory on warfare, okay? That particular theory, there's some other ones too. Man is inherently violent, so therefore we're always going to fight. Well, that's kind of given up, but all right. Some people focus on the legalities, civilizational clash, right? Hey, the Muslims stop here, Christian society stops here. Well, those 2 cultures meet is where all the war is going to happen. Some people actually predicted that that would be the future of warfare. Mass movements, right? So like Hitler was a mass movement in the sense that people kind of rose up, followed him blindly. So a lot of these theories, the majority of these theories actually require what's called rational actors. Okay, so anyone here play chess? One? Everyone know the basic rules of chess? Okay, so you know that if you sacrifice your pawn, right, to take a higher ranking piece, that's a good strategy. If you lose your higher ranking piece for a pawn, bad strategy. The whole game of chess is based on the idea of a rational actors theory. You're going to rationally be able to deter somebody, engage somebody, whatever, based on logical movements, right? That's the idea of strategy. Well, the problem with the all right, so a theory on collective group violence is only as good as its ability to measure all forms of the phenomenon. Imagine if Isaac Newton's theory of gravitation only worked 80% of the time. Would we still rely on it, right? Even though Einstein's theory of gravity, right? Drop an apple from a tree, right? It'll fall at a certain rate. So, and that's what's over there on the right-hand side. There's the actual mathematical equation. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, that only worked 8 out of 10 times. From a purely scientific standpoint, how good of a theory is that for you guys? I mean, if your weapon only went off 8 out of 10 times, we don't really know why. You just eject that round and try again. It's not a very reliable weapon, right? Not a very reliable theory. So we need to come up with a better theory that better addresses what's actually occurring. I was also in my 20s, early 20s when 9/11 happened. And that's the sensation that I remember. Have any of you guys watched, I can't remember his name, Vogel, I believe it is, the former U.S. Army Ranger who was beheaded by ISIS about a year and a half ago? I didn't really get out more and watch the news. Those types of videos, right? Not that you should spend all your time watching them, but they invoke that same emotional response, right? Has anybody in this room right now been motivated to defend somebody or yourself or your country, etc., based on something that you saw but didn't really affect you? Talk about different pieces here, okay? So, you have three things: the leadership, the strength of your identity, and the level of your victimization, okay? Obviously, predictive intelligence piece that I was talking about. So let's break these three things down into their components, right? So we can see what the actual score would look like. Leadership, right? Pretty self-explanatory, right? We all know the difference between leadership and management, right? A little picture there, one of my favorites. Right? Leadership means you are literally leading them. There are only 3 jobs in the military that have the word leader. Do you guys know that? Fire team leader, squad leader, platoon leader. Those are the only 3 job titles in the military that have the word leader in them. They have those words because at those 3 levels, right, when we talk about combat, those are the 3 levels of leadership where that individual is saying, you 3 with me, we're going to kick that door down, follow me. Literally, follow me, I'm your team leader. Do what I do, follow me and do what I do. Same thing with squad leader, right, and platoon leader. Past that level, we don't have generals leading charges anymore like we do in the Civil War. Right? Those people are managers. So you have to have a leader. You have to have somebody who can communicate to the masses that they're being victimized. What this means is, based on these 5 variables, is how attracted you will be to that group, okay? So, for example, this is the easiest one, visibility of group identity. What are we all wearing right now? We're all wearing uniform. So I can walk into any military base, theoretically Army in this case, and if I see somebody in uniform, what do I automatically know right then and there? We're part of the same group, right? I can ask them directions. I can say hi, right? Greeting of the day, salute them if they're an officer. I immediately know that they're on my team and what our roles are between each other, right? But we have something else on our uniform, right, called a rank. So those 2 pieces of information you can fit into any social setting within the military. It's almost like some really smart guy decided to put everybody in uniform. You know what I mean? Like, that's why we do it. It's that exact reason. It's to create that increase in social identity. All right? And then we have the geographical proximity. Do you feel more or less attached to the people that live in the neighborhood where you grew up? More, right? More than you do probably the people in the Middle East. The farther you get in a geographical proximity, the harder it is to maintain a group identity. All right, then we have goal alignment, okay? The more narrow, unified goals, more like tactical goals, the more narrow you can define your group goals, that increases group identity, right? If you have this, use Greenpeace as an example, like their goal is, I don't even know, they're obviously environmental people, but they don't really actually have a good goal. Hey, our goal is to reduce pollution by 10%, 20%, whatever. So it's hard to be attached to that group for a lot of people, right? But if they define their goals, you're like, yep, I agree with that. I'm a part of that group. Then you have what's called a level of abstraction. Abstraction just means how our group is organized, right? Right now, our level of abstraction is U.S. Army deep sea divers. this moment. That's what our group, okay? As we think wider, we have the Department of the Army in general, right? Then we have the military, then we have the Department of Defense, then you have the government, right? Then you have US citizens. As you think bigger or more abstract, you have less and less attachment to that group. See what I'm saying? We all about being Army divers. We're okay about being in the Army. We're pretty ambivalent about being in the Department of Defense. As you get farther, eventually you can go all the way to human. Like, how much attachment do you have to every member of the human race? Right? All right, who's seen the movie Independence Day? All right, aliens invade today. How much attachment do you have to the human race?
A lot.
A whole lot, right? That's my point. The level of abstraction at the human level right now is as big as we can go. Insert another race, and we instantly feel more attached to being human than we did 5 seconds ago. And the level of accentuation. Accentuation means that we are 100% alike, or that's like the highest level. We are 100% alike, we're exactly the same, we all look and talk and everything the same, and nobody else is like us. All the way to our group has a lot of in common with other groups, right? So think Republican and Democrat is a good example for this one, right? A Republican and Democrats, 100% different. I mean, not really, right? I mean, they have different political parties, but neither party wants to murder the other, right? Neither of them believe in murder. They both believe that the U.S. is the greatest country in the world, for the most part. So they have a lot of commonality, right? That's why they sit in Congress and they work stuff out. So your strength of identity to the Republican versus the Democratic Party is softened because we know that we do have a lot in common. Okay. The next variable is the level of macro victimization. All right, and this is the other piece of this pie. So we have our proximity to victimization. Okay, so that's what we talk about. If you're the primary source versus the secondary source. If you were personally victimized by another group, you are a primary source of victimization. The farther away you get from that, the lower the score becomes, right? So if you heard about a guy that 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 was attacked by ISIS, that's not going to ratchet it up for you. If your brother was attacked by ISIS, now all of a sudden that level of victimization goes way up, right? The second variable is the severity of victimization. If you're just throwing Coke bottles or making fun of each other, not that big of a deal, right? The more severe it gets, the higher it ratchets up that level of victimization. So if I believe in my heart that this other group poses an existential threat to my group, that victimization score is going to go through the roof. Okay? And then the last one is immediacy of threat. And that's pretty common, right? Or pretty obvious, rather. We're lazy. Humans are procrastinators by nature. And people still have Christmas shopping left to do. A couple of them, me too. You know what? Wait till the last minute, okay? So if that threat isn't immediate, it tends to temper our victimization level, right? So ISIS is an example. We know about it. ISIS kind of gets torqued up a little bit. But if there were 30,000 ISIS terrorists here, it'd be a little different ball of wax, right? All right, so let's look at some samples real quick. So we talked, first thing, you got fellow Christians that were killed in the Middle East. Assuming you're Christian, right? When you see another Christian get killed in the Middle East, your score is going to be pretty low, right? Because they're not very close to you. They don't look like you, right? Things of that nature. Now we'll jump all the way down to these last two here. Okay, small military unit attacked by the enemy. There's a guy named Lieutenant Colonel Grossman, wrote a book called On Killing. Great book. I highly recommend you read it. I believe it's in the library you guys can check out. He measured the firing rates of all U.S. military from the Civil War all the way to World War II. And what he found a lot of interesting things. But one of the interesting things that he found was the highest firing rates. Everyone knows what a firing rate is, right? The highest killing rates in U.S. military was from small elite units that had recently suffered one of their own as killed or made a casualty. Almost 100% of the people in that situation, soldiers, Marines, whatever, were more than willing to take their gun, aim at the enemy, and kill them. What are the implications for the United States? Existing predictive intelligence uses qualitative means, experience in the region, knowledge of the key players, all these existing conflict theories, etc. However, the link between macro victimization and violent retaliation is direct and it's highly correlated.